Level Up Latina partners with working women and mamas alike to guide them in achieving fulfilling career and life goals through financial empowerment, professional or leadership coaching, and personal wellness. Find the unique coaching you need to succeed.
You're listening to Vero, Ceci, and Irene, and we are Level Up Latina. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Latina podcast. This is episode 165. It's part of our summer series. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about something short and sweet. And funny enough, for this one, we have a question that we're each going to answer. And we hope that you'll answer it too. And maybe email us your answers at the end of the podcast. But we've been thinking a lot about just values and who we are. And when you're raising kids, that's always coming to the table. And you think a lot about what your moral compass is and what your character is. So today we're going to each answer the question, describe a situation in your life that changed your values. So hopefully that's for the better. But before we get into it, how are we feeling, Vero and Ceci?
Amazing. I'm feeling amazing, darling. My voice is getting deeper as we go into these summer series episodes. So I hope you guys enjoy my Zsa Zsa Gabor sound.
You're funny. You sound like, not even Zsa Zsa, you sound like Cruella de Vil.
Even better. It was after I cleared my throat earlier. That's what helped.
And I, on the other hand, am getting congested. And the more I talk, I got stuck earlier. Que se me vino todo, like la congestión, and I don't know, it's like stuck in there. And then my computer is old y también está haciendo like some weird noises. But anyway, aquí estamos grabando y hablando de these hot topics.
Hot summer topics. So basically values. Hopefully we all have them, like I said earlier, and we were all trying to rack our brains. We did a pop quiz today and gave ourselves some creative things to talk about over the course of like 2 hours. So you're getting the best of us because we've just been rambling on and really confessing stuff today, bringing up old heartbreaks and life upgrades. But now we're going to talk about values and who we are and how things have changed for us. I can start because I know that this is one of those where we're just going to work together and riff together. But I can think of, and this kind of came up earlier with the Guilt-Free Squad, one thing that really changed my values in my life was having my children. But beyond having my children, having a second child to the first, I think really was a big shift for me in my life. And I talked about in the episode before this, like how therapy's been really, really good for me. And it's helped me think about like my siblings and how they played a role in raising me as the youngest of 6. And when I had my baby girl and she had her big brother that was 4 years older than her, I really reimagined like how I wanted to raise them. And I wanted them, I didn't know I was doing this, obviously. But now looking back on it, I'm really glad now that they're like 10, 11, and 15, that I knew right away that I wanted them to be really respectful of each other. And so the way I was raised was very different. Like we had respect, but that was a very loose word growing up. And so the siblings kind of did not respect each other much. And we were just a mosh posh of craziness. So I knew when I had my baby girl that I did not want my kids to get along the way my siblings and I got along. The trash man agrees, so he's going to roll on by as I'm discussing this. But yeah, so the way my siblings and I grew up, we were like very tumultuous, and my dad used to beat my mom, so there was a lot of like physical violence and like fist fighting growing up. And I was the baby of 6, so that sucks. Like I was always the one that I couldn't really defend myself or hit you back, and if I did, you were gonna hit me 3 times harder. Like it really sucked to grow up that way. So when I had my baby girl, I just changed my mind. Like I decided I wasn't gonna spank my kids anymore because I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and I didn't want Isaiah to feel that he could hit his little sister. And so I changed completely how I saw corporal punishment. Too bad for Isaiah that it happened when it happened, because all bets were off the 4 years that he was alive and kicking, and the only kid. I used to spank him. I used to get really angry. I used to give him time out. I did all the things I'm not proud of, but that's why I'd like to think that my values changed and how I saw parenting changed, and it was different than how I grew up. And my mom did the best she could. My siblings did the best she could. There's no hard feelings there. Violence was just more a part of our upbringing, and it is very much a reality in a lot of Latino households. But for me, I just didn't see it. Algo no cuadraba. Second time I've said that recording. So yeah, having 2 kids really changed how I wanted my kids to treat each other. Flash forward all these years later, and my kids ask me a lot now about my upbringing, about my siblings. They're starting to understand like the siblings I'm close to, the siblings I'm not close to. I talk to them about like my therapy sessions, and I think I've become really well adjusted around just life, and it is what it is, and you got to make the best of it and be the best you can be. But I think they're starting to understand like, oh, mom does certain things because she's just trying to be better, wants to be better than how it was, or just different, because we're not trying to say like, oh, the way I was brought up was terrible. There was so many blessings, but my kids understand now like why I'm not good with them being disrespectful to one another or putting hands on one another, like super huge kind of no here. And having each other's back is like so big to me. So the last story I'll say about that is my kids were at SOOO City yesterday, and Noah was making like inappropriate jokes with his cousin, and they're boys and they're going to say inappropriate things, but his sister kept asking him to stop. Like she kind of felt like he was crossing the line, he should stop. And she had to ask him 3 times. So she told me about it in the car, and I felt for her. And they were kind of picking on the youngest cousin, and that was, again, it triggers this, like, we have to be respectful of family. I don't want you to pick on siblings. So basically I saw these 2 brothers really picking on each other, the big one picking on the younger one, and Noah was kind of co-signing on that, and that's not allowed in our home. Like my kids are not allowed to, like, definitely not pick on each other out in the world and like get a friend to do it too. Like, I was really brokenhearted for my little, their little cousin who was the youngest and the one being picked on. So I waited for them to leave, and I talked to Noah, and he felt really bad. You could see that he felt bad. I tried to process it in a way that was like, look, we don't get to do that here. Like, you don't get to be like, you don't get to encourage the bully, even if the bully is a family member. Like, how they treat their sibling matters, and like, you don't get to pounce. And I overheard some of it in the car, and like, you gotta be a good person. The person you are here, you gotta be everywhere, Noah. And he's like, can I go apologize to Sophia? Like, he got what I was putting down, that like, not only were you not being really great to your cousin, because the big cousin was being mean to a little cousin, like when your sister was catching that and it's being like, hey, you know, don't do that. Like, don't join in. She had to tell you repeatedly. He's like, yeah, she had to tell me 3 times. So he understood that sister was trying to like tell him, like, dude, like, let those brothers hash it out. Let them say inappropriate things. Let them be mean, but you're not going to be mean too. And he was ignoring his sister, and he apologized to his sister. So those are very different scenarios than how I was raised. Absolutely different. Like, my mom says we were an embarrassment in the world. She once took us to Knott's, and my brother grabbed a bat and hit a cousin with it and like cursed him out. An adult cousin, a cousin who was in his 30s. My like 11-year-old brother is hitting him with a bat and telling him to shut the fuck up, motherfucker. That's how I grew up, y'all. So imagine if my kids knew the story of like when I was their age, my brother was running around with a bat hitting adults. My mom was mortified. I don't even want my kid to like call a little cousin by a name. They were making fun of him because he was eating a fart quesadilla, whatever that's about. Anyway, what is that?
I want to join in that session. I'm just kidding.
Poor little boy was just getting made fun of because he wanted a quesadilla that was green, and his mom made him a shrekadilla, and they just could not stop making fun of this little boy. And point is, my values changed when I had kids that were more than, one. I had multiple kids, and I wanted them to have respect and love it. I didn't want them to be the kids at Knott's that were losing their minds with them.
Do you think it was mostly because you knew number 2 was a girl, and you maybe wanted to?
You know what? Maybe actually, yeah, because I was the youngest after 4 boys. So maybe I had this like deep like sense of protecting her, and hitting wasn't going to be okay. Maybe if she would have been a boy, it wouldn't have shifted so much for me. That's a good question, but I think so.
Oh, wow.
Thank God. Okay, bueno. But yeah, our lives completely changed when we had multiple kids. Like, violence just became something we were going to be really hyper aware of.
It's so funny that you say violence. Like, when your kids bring in different dynamics into the family, and I know this is probably, I'll continue with what I wanted to share in regards to the values, but I think that, like, one of our kids is like wakes up and chooses violence every day. Like,
when they're little, yeah.
Yeah, when they're little. I'm just like, dude, y es el más chiquito, and he's just like, well, I think he just, that's the only way he can like define himself and communicate. Yeah. But I'm like, oh my God, kids are just something else. I think for me, in my experience, and I shared this before in our podcast as well, one of my my major experience that changed my values overall was as a very young adult. When I had my abortion. I think all these like feelings and thoughts about that have come up with this Roe v. Wade, and being overturned by the Supreme Court, and and I feel like, damn, that really sucks. Like, if that wasn't the case for me then, like my or I wouldn't have been able to make that decision, like, where would I be now? And we had actually a listener send us a message about it, and she said, I think you women are very strong women. You would have made it no matter what. And I was like, I think that I love the fact that I've been able to become a strong woman, but I was given that opportunity because of the fact that I had that option, that choice back then, just because I know myself so well. You know yourself and what you're capable of. And like I mentioned in that podcast, I said, I know for sure my life would have been different. And from that moment on, I went to Catholic school my entire life. My parents were super Catholic. I to this day, I believe in God. I have faith. I'm a person of faith. But I don't feel guilty for that anymore. Like at one point, there was just like that Catholic guilt that, oh my God, ¿quién creo que soy? All this other stuff. But it really made me shift my values in that sense. Like I am not going to impose my beliefs onto other people. I don't want to make you think you have to live your life a certain way because of what I believe in. So I feel that my values from that point on did shift, and I'm grateful for that because it made me a very open-minded person where I respect other people's opinions. And if you don't have that mindset, it's going to be a really hard life in a sense, right? Some of us like to struggle every day, and I just choose not to. I choose to value people's opinions, even though, I listen to your opinion. I might not think it's the right one. But hey, you know why we're here? We're all entitled to an opinion, but it doesn't make you right or wrong. It's just like, all right, that's what you believe in. Perfect. That's your opinion. Perfect. But that definitely shifted my values. And it was a very eye-opening experience. And seeing that I wasn't the only one going through that kind of stuff, that's where I realized that the guilt kind of had to slowly went away when I was like, oh, this is a lot more common than I thought. It's, people, this happens to people, and they make a decision to choose to continue pregnancy or not for different reasons. And some of them are personal, and well, all of them are personal. It doesn't matter what you think, but, and some of them are medical. And it really is, if you're not ready, you're not ready, but it is up to you to choose. So my values shifted then, my values for the better. And I will support anyone, when it comes down to making their choice and having autonomy as a female, as a woman over your body. And so that was my experience with my shifting.
That's a big one, Vito. And I've thought a lot about you lately. I've thought a lot about my own journey. I've been telling people to listen to that episode 118. Shout out to episode 118, where we talked about deeply personal stories around abortion or right to choose. I've thought a lot about you. I've told your story a lot. I've heard other stories. When this news came down, I had a lot of people texting me their own personal stories, told me that I could share them anonymously if I needed to on the podcast. Like, so many different people talk about how abortion was a blessing in their lives. But I often tell people your story, like how your life would have been completely different, and the circumstances of the story and the baby daddy and where he was and how old you were. I'm just like, this best friend of mine, like her life would have completely been a different life. And while, yeah, sure, she could have done it, like, duh, like everyone like saying like, yeah, you could still make it through, like, oh my God, but night and day, the life, like you wouldn't have gone on to college, you wouldn't have gone on to have like the career that you have, the husband, the children, my goodness, like, again, people can listen to this and want to take us down, but it changed your life for the better, I would like to think. And it's your life that I'm talking about, but it's a beautiful thing that you've shared it. Thank you for being vulnerable and honest. And Ceci, that leaves you to share a time in your life where you feel like your values changed.
I think for me, it's been just creating my own family and what that meant for us and how I, value my own family in our own time. I grew up in a family where a lot of my mom's side of the family was always around 24/7 at our house, and there was no boundaries. There's never been boundaries. Like, siempre está ahí toda la gente, and I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it growing up, que todos los primos always there, and then the parents se iban que al casino, and we all los primos ahí, desmadrosos, and we never had like a set like bedtime, essentially. I don't know what, yo solita when I've talked about this again previously, but yo solita when I was in high school, I'm like, okay, I need to go to sleep at 10 because I need to wake up. And then if we were at family events, like, okay, I'd tell my mom, like, all right, I need to come back at a certain time to go to bed. Y esa me decía, pues entonces no vayas, or have your dad pick you up, stuff like that. So when I, became a mom, and, I think when I was pregnant, my husband and I sat down and talked about how we were going to raise our kids, and we were going to have routines, and routines were very important to us. And of course that we were going to have, family on both sides trying to, ahí meter su cuchara and say like, ay, qué sangrones, ay, pero, stay longer, for example, like stays longer en la fiesta, o qué le hace if they don't sleep. But they weren't there, right, when it came down to handling 2 babies and putting 2 babies to sleep and waking up, every half hour, whatever it was. They weren't there. So to us, it was like our mental health, our routines, our feeding, what we fed the girls, that was important to us, so I think that changed a bit. I don't know how, again, I started becoming disciplined and having my own little routines when I was in high school, yo solita, I don't know. But then that again, once I was pregnant, all right, this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to raise our kids. They're going to eat at, set times. They're not going to have easy access to the kitchen, because then, luego la gente se queja like, oh, estos niños no comen nada. They're just eating, all kinds of junk food. And we were going to have, them eat healthy foods and, and not a lot of sugary treats. That's only for special occasions or on the weekends, también. And then they're going to have their routine where we wake up and then nap later and go to sleep at 8, or I guess depending on the age, right? Pero yeah, that's what has made it work for us as parents. I think being parents has been one of the most challenging things that we've encountered, parents of twins, but we've made it work. We've survived. And that's because we've implemented those routines from early on, and what the girls eat, and, even what they watch. Again, with working from home, we've become more lax with screen time because we need it, especially como ahorita, que I'm like, God, let me go put some movie on. But that's what's, what changed for me. Like I grew up thinking like, oh, pues toda la bola, todos juntos all the time, or traveling together all the time, todos en un cuarto. I know, our parents didn't have the resources to have more, like spend more money on hotels, but I grew up like that. And when I had my own family, saw that, okay, it doesn't have to be that way. We can have our own routines. We can have our own traditions and just make it work. Y si no les parece a los demás, oh, well, again, they don't live with us,
That's, I think, the biggest pinpoint about like your values changing, that other people judge that as like something's wrong with you because your values have shifted. Like, like someone could look at me and be like, come on, putazos, like hit your kid, like he misbehaved. Or could look at you and be like, no, they should be up all night. Just put some 2 chairs together. They can stay at the party till 5 a.m.
Exactly.
Yeah, like just because we grew up like that, like we want to do it different. And we're not judging you, Mom. Like, yeah, I was raging till 5 a.m. sleeping on chairs, but I don't want the kids to sleep on chairs. Dang, the trash man wants to be on this episode. Y'all gonna have to hear the trash man.
Yeah.
Listen. Values are critically important, and wherever they are in your life and however they're shifting, it's going to feel comfortable. It sometimes feels uncomfortable when your values shift and change because you're coming into your own and you're evolving as a human being.
Let me chime in and say something. So I remember when we were at your house a couple years ago, and I think Yara was there with her kid, and remember she's like, sorry, I don't want you guys to think like, oh, it's that white lady that she needs to put her kid to sleep at a certain time. And we were all like, no, hell no. We all agree routines are important. Like, put your kid to sleep, or llévatelo a dormir, or whatever the case was. That was at your house, Irene, cuando we all got together a couple years ago.
The best part about that is that I don't think I'm a white person. Like, how sad. Like, white people have boundaries. White people have schedules and routine. But I mean, the reality is like we all can. It's just like, it is what it is. You are where you are. My son right now is in a college class at UCLA, and he is just loving this class, talking about how much he loves it. We went to lunch together. He's just telling me all about it. It's an international development class. I was a global studies major, so I feel like he's getting a lot of that flavor. And he was sharing all this really cool facts with me about different communities and understanding like geography and your your path to life based on where you were born and how your path can be a certain way. And he's like, funny enough, Mom, your path to life can be determined by where you grew up. Like, duh, my husband and I are like products of that. Like, we grew up in Inglewood. And so I told him, how does it feel to know that not one, but two of your parents like made it out of Inglewood? He's like, oh my God, Mom. He's like, funny enough, one of the first lists that we studied was Inglewood, California. And like the high likelihood of single parents, or the high likelihood of, there were all these factors or whatever, or like growing up in like a food desert and not having enough food options. And so there's higher heart disease, for instance. He's like, one of the places we're studying is Inglewood. But he's like, no, but it makes me really proud that you both had opportunities. And he's like, we're also studying places that have like programs. There's also, maybe you don't have resources, but when you have enough programs, that makes a difference too. So I feel like I'm talking to my kid about something that is so adult, so huge. And this ain't white people shit. Like, this is not white people shit. Exactly. It's just like he happens to be at this class at UCLA. And I'm reminding him all the time about like his culture and who he is. And I was like, and you were telling people like, I'm Isaiah Quevedo, right? And he's like, nobody ever pronounces my name right, Mom. Even Latinos can't pronounce it. I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. If they speak Spanish, they can pronounce it. So he's like, no, Mom, I tell people all the time, like, I'm from Redondo, but my mom is Mexican and my dad is Guatemalan. I thought it was really sweet. And I was like, cool. Yeah, I know you could tell your grandparents, but like, yeah, just say Mom's Mexican. He's like, I love it. He's like, I love telling people that. He's like, people always think I'm white too. He's like, it's like so annoying. But like, I always tell them, like, they just assume. He's like, Latino's such an interesting thing. They just assume. But I'm having these like high level conversations with him. And the first thing I'm thinking is, I am doing this because I want him to be the kind of kid that talks about the second home, the summer home. And I want his kids to go to UCLA for even more summers, and to have, like, he doesn't know the things I'm doing are very like first time. These are first time things that and I always tell him all the time. I told him today at lunch, I don't ever want you guys to be perfect. It's never what I'm striving for. It's what I want is I want you guys to believe that you can have the life that you want, that you deserve whatever you want. You can have that here, you can have it there, you can have it over there. But I want you to be comfortable wherever you are so that you can have whatever you want. There's never a space where you feel like you don't belong. I just want you to feel belonging wherever you are, whatever that looks like. So we happen to be sitting at this bougie, delicious place called Rábano, which has like these bowls and just great food. He's having like a Thai bowl with salad and ancient grains, and I'm having this delicious carne with like black beans, and we're just grubbing. He's like, I get it, Mom, I get it. Like, we're having this bougie bowl. I'm having this Thai boba. He's like, this just so that we can have what we want, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be this, but like, have whatever we want. And it was very sweet. I'm like, if you want to walk into that Lazy Acres and you feel like you belong and you're buying a $24 cookie, and they were just like making fun of how that life is hard too, and you got to afford it. But it made me feel great to know that like, we do these things and they might be different than what our family judges, but it's for these moments where we feel like our kids can stand on our shoulders. Like, they can stand on our shoulders. And we all stood on our mom's shoulders. We all stood on their shoulders too. They took these huge leaps, these great movements ahead. So like, I talk about like my family and abuse and all that, but that's such a small little tiny nothing compared to like the amazing life that I had. Like, my mom is like brilliant and amazing, and she did the same thing. She sent me to UCLA some way, somehow. I took the bus. I didn't live there. I had to get it free. But I did exactly what Isaiah's doing. From Inglewood. You know what I mean? It's like, you can change your mind. You can have these things. You can have, and there will be things in your life that'll challenge your values. And it's not a white thing. And it's not a them and us or haves and have-nots. It's about just deserving, not perfection, but whatever you feel you deserve, like, put yourself in the position to have it.
And we label it white because that's what we imagine people to be, because we know that our rancho parents, because most of our parents came from a ranchito, a pueblito, or somewhere like that, and with the minimal amount of knowledge and experiences that they had. But as we're growing up, we are exposed to so many other things that we call it white people. But it really is like, our parents' values changed the moments they crossed the border, the moments they started, going to work in the United States of America, wherever they were working in the fields, if they were working in factories, or they were, cociendo, todo eso, their values shifted and changed just as much as our values now have changed. I mean, we had an awesome podcast where we talked about living the American dream, and we are our parents' dream. We are living it out for them. So we are doing the things that they could have only dreamt of. And what it means in this case is doing things that they couldn't do. So if it means putting your kids to sleep, and even later that day, lo travieso no se le quita, our kids are solo trabancados. her son's head was stuck in the railing. Do you remember?
Right. Same party. Lots happened at that party.
But it's like, we just feel that since we grew up similarly, that we're going to judge each other because of the new things that we're doing. But the beautiful thing is that we now have these opportunities to like allow our perspectives and our values to shift and change for the better. of not only us, but the people around us. It all made sense, but I feel that that's why. And we call it white people shit because it's something so new to us. But this won't be new to our kids. This won't be new to their kids. And we just pass on what's going to be so important and valuable in the sense of what's going to keep us as a family moving forward.
Yeah, I just want our kids to take up space, baby. I just want them to take up space. So this was a really profound episode. A few limited interruptions, hopefully. We all got to share different values that we thought changed our lives. For me, it was like my kids and like how siblings would get along in my home and how that shifted around respect being defined differently. For Vero, it was the right to choose and how her life completely changed at a moment where she needed that right. And it's actually really devastating right now to think about the millions of women that'll be impacted by Roe versus Wade being overturned. It's absolutely devastating. So thank you, Vero, for opening up and sharing. And for Ceci, it was like a cultural difference. It was a family difference. Her family's being raised very differently. And there's judgment that comes along with that. But I love how you said, Ceci, they weren't there to put two kids to sleep. Like a twin mom, like how many twin moms do we have in the world? Like even that, you're definitely like a three-eyed freaking snake. You're rare. So
Esa rarita.
yeah, like you're pretty incredible to even have two kids at once. So screw what the naysayers say. Ultimately, we're all doing this for the better and we're all growing. And who's to say that our values won't change a year from now, 2 years from now? We're always growing. So unless there's anything else, I'm going to share how to find us after the fact, after this episode is done. Please feel free to email us if you have questions or stories to share about your values and where they shifted. Our email is admin@leveluplatina.com. Go to leveluplatina.com as well to still get tickets for our fall event. On September 24th, we're having an amazing fall event. You have to come. You want to be around like-minded women talking about these kinds of things, values, growing, shifting, evolving. So come to our event. We'd love to see you there. We have great surprises, giveaways, panelists. It's going to be fantastic. If you want to promote your business, give a shout out on this podcast, you can also figure out how to do that on leveluplatina.com. We want to hear from you. Please give some love. It's a great birthday gift shout out to send someone anything on this podcast that you would like to send a message or promote a business or an event of your own. With that being said, you can also find us on social media as always at Level Up Latina is our handle on Instagram and Facebook. Twitter is at Latina_up. Please share this episode and others. Comment in the DMs. We'd love to hear from you. But other than that, that's going to be a wrap for this episode. Muchísimas gracias. Las queremos mucho. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hot girl summer.
Besitos.
Beso. Besitos.
Hot vieja summer.
Hot viejita summer.
Woo!